Hello and welcome to another episode of the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast. I am your host, Janet Sandberg. I am also a energy healer and mental health life coach and lots of other things. Channeler, author, you name it. But most importantly, I am the host of this podcast. And today we are talking to our very special guest, Koya Bakare. Koya, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having the space for me. I appreciate you.
Of course, of course. Let's just start off by learning a little bit about you.
Sure, I am a woman. I am a contracted model, lifestyle model, and a national pageant queen. I am a lover of human beings and everything that's beautiful. I am also a survivor and a victim of bulimia, 2 suicide attempts, as well as sexual assault. I celebrate life every day. I look forward to hearing the birds hum because I remember a time when I just loathed that. So I'm
Mm,
here to celebrate every moment, every second of life. Just little old me.
beautiful. I love it. And I'm very excited to hear your story. Just in that little 2 second intro there, we got a little bit about you and what you must have gone through with all of those things. So take us back.
Yeah, growing up, I felt always felt different. What I now realize I was just wired a little bit differently. I
Mhm.
celebrate my differences, and so I struggled with esteem. I didn't have the words for it at the time. It just
Sure.
I identified it as I got older. But when I was younger, just to bring it all in, I was sexually assaulted. I didn't have the words. I was young. I was four at the first time that I could remember.
Um,
Um, I didn't have the words to process that.
of course.
And then it happened several times after that. That then blossomed into definitely low self worth. I was always very
Mhm.
quiet. I would skip school to go to the library, and words saved me. And then it was
Mm.
then I was able to read these different stories of these heroines and these heroes who are able to use their voice to articulate their own survival. I still wasn't able to put those pieces together, but I was then able to garner up a strength to say, hey, these things are happening to me, but not to have that confused with, I said it to my parents. I was still very much, I felt responsible. I felt betrayed. I felt alone, though I knew that my parents indeed loved me.
Mhm.
But what happened from that was that my my esteem was in the toilet. I didn't even have any. It was just non-existent. And so I was characterized a lot as being mean, as
Hmm.
being standoffish. And if I cried, it's not because I feel woeful, but I just remember little Koya. And what it was, she just didn't trust people.
Sure.
And I was afraid that I remember wanting to tell my mom, but I knew that my parents loved me so much that if I told them, my parents wouldn't be here. I knew my parents would take a different route. And so I felt
Mm.
that I didn't know what to do. I eventually, years later, was able to speak with my sister. My mom has since passed.
Okay.
But and unfortunately, it was something that had happened to others. That as my story, I started being more open and
Mhm.
very sad. I'm jumping to get ahead, but realized that happened to more people around me than I had even
Oh.
imagined, and it was just something that it was a seed that took on, and I'm saying it tongue in cheek, but a seed of woefulness and evilness that took root and blossomed into all these other different things. So with my self-esteem being what it was, I remember the first time I swallowed each time I swallowed a bottle of pills. And I just no longer desired to be here. I didn't understand why this would happen. God, if you're real, why would this
Mm-hmm.
happen to me?
Yeah.
And I remember, Janet, when I awakened and thinking, can I cuss? I don't cuss.
No,
But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
Say
was like,
whatever you like,
yeah,
however you like it.
I was like, damn, I can't even get this right.
Oh,
It just was. So I'm stuck here. I'm stuck here to deal with this. And my second attempt happened again. But the difference, and I know I'm gonna cry, the difference was in the second attempt, my mother, who has since passed, she passed during COVID, but not from COVID. My mother called as I could hear the phone ring. I swallowed maybe like 30 pills, and I was at school, I was in undergrad, I had locked my suite door. Um, but I heard the phone ring, and I guess I picked it up. Clearly, I picked it up, and I heard my mother praying. And it was the first time I felt I'm going to make it through this. It was my mother. I just heard her praying, and she was like, and she calls me Co, and so she was like, Co, I'm on my way. She was 4 hours away,
oh my gosh.
and that started the healing process. I had already, and when I'm saying healing process, I went into therapy,
Okay.
which was a whole ordeal. I believe that's yay therapy. I say it all the time. But what therapy did, it forced me to have to deal with it, which I didn't anticipate. I love therapy. I think everyone, no matter what, should have a therapist.
Yes.
What I wasn't prepared for was the unpacking. And with the unpacking, I'm glad it happened, but with the unpacking, it allowed me to see a lot of the other traumas I had dealt with that I had placed into the back of my mind because I wasn't able
Mm-hmm.
at the time to deal with it. I'm
Yeah.
since healed it, but it was like, oh my gosh. But I had a mother who walked me through. Oh, I don't know what I would have done
Mm.
without her. When it came to bulimia, I was always very lean. So for me, I could hide it.
Yeah.
At least I thought I could hide it. And no one talked about bulimia. I heard of anorexia, but no
Mhm.
one talked about bulimia at the time. So I
Can
thought I
you
was
just
doing.
tell
I'm
people
sorry.
in case they don't know?
Yes. So bulimia, and definitely is not a badge of honor at all. It's an eating disorder. And what I would do and what happens is, in my case, I would gorge myself, so overeating. And then what became my temple of choice was the whatever was the local commode. I didn't care. Gas station, job, school. And it became part of my personal ritual. So I would, if you're somewhere, you may map out where the exit sign is. I wanted to know where the nearest
Hmm.
bathroom was. And as demented as it may sound, it gave me a sense of control.
Yes.
I now understood, though I was definitely killing myself because I felt the physical onsets of it. But in my mind, it's like, oh, I'm lean. No one would know. People knew. Um,
Hmm.
and a friend of mine actually was the one who actually made me realize, oh, I'm not hiding out as much as I think that I am. But it felt good to have at the time, or so I thought, to
Yeah.
have a sense of control over my life because it was taken away
Yeah.
by others. When I was in my early 20s, still dealing with bulimia, still going through therapy, I was at a former job, and one of my coworkers, a former model for Calvin Klein, he and I would speak a lot just about the industry. And my daddy, oh, I love my daddy. I love my daddy. And I just wanted to be. My dad's a scientist. I wanted to be like my dad. My dad's this Navy man and this brilliant man. And I would speak to him just about my dad. And at that time, I was aspiring to go to grad school. I'm sorry, go to acquire my doctorate and things like that because I wanted my dad to be so proud of me.
Yeah.
And so he would hear the stories of my reverence for my dad. Definitely, he knew about my mom, but so my dad was this scientist, and I needed to be a scientist just like my daddy. And one day, I was having an episode. I went to the bathroom, and he walked in. Well, he walked to the door and walked in enough so not um to be inappropriate to any other woman who may have been in there. And I walked out and I see him there. And he said, "If you do it again, I will tell your father." The juxtaposition of that was that I was more afraid of him telling my dad than me killing myself because that's literally what I was doing. And it
Yeah.
scared me so bad. I knew that he didn't physically know my dad, but all it was is a quick Google search. But I had so much reverence that I was so afraid that my father would be disappointed. And so I struggled with that. And I begged and I pleaded for him not to tell my dad. I didn't even try to compartmentalize or understand. He doesn't
Mhm.
even know your father. But I was
Right.
just so afraid. Yeah, he doesn't even know your dad.
That's
But
a
in my
huge
mind,
threat.
it was, he knew my secret.
Mhm.
It was, and then within that week, another coworker came up to me and she said, "I keep seeing you go to the bathroom. Why are you going to the bathroom so much?" And I felt that like my whole plan was falling apart. And I didn't want to deal with, I knew what I was doing, but I didn't understand the full physical and emotional turmoil. And all I knew was that I had this secret. I couldn't let anyone know.
Mhm.
So I went home that week and I went into the kitchen, and in my mind, this was going to be my last time. Still dealing with the onset of the abuse, the failed suicide attempts, though I was in therapy, not as active as I am now. And now that the bag is up, that everyone knows. So I felt.
Yeah.
I felt fully exposed when I had been hiding out because of my pain. And there's a noted speaker, motivational speaker. His name is Les Brown,
Mhm.
and he just so happened to be on TV. You cannot tell me it saved my life. I was in the kitchen and I was like just crying, trying to figure it out. And I heard him say, as he was speaking, I don't know if it was a conference at the time or what have you, but he said, "If there's no enemy within, the enemy outside would do me no harm. If
Ooh.
there is no enemy within," and I'm gonna cry because it definitely you could not have told me that that man that moment was for me. It ultimately changed my life, and I listened to him, and I realized that I had allowed others to become the narrators of my own life. I
Mm.
didn't realize that I had the ability, the authority to create my own love story. I
Yeah.
had given others the power. And when he said that, it shifts everything. Now, for all intents and purposes, I guess I was smart. I graduated from school, went to grad school, whatever. But I was dealing with all of this trauma. And I realized, oh my gosh, I've given up all of this power. I wish I could say that I no longer have bulimic episodes after that because I did. But what I did, I let my mama know I needed more help.
Mhm. Yep.
And we went into active therapy. My mother was this amazing trailblazer. We talk about mindfulness now, and I do mindfulness moments here at different places. But she would do a lot of mirror work with me, and to
Oh.
empower me and say, "Koya, you're beautiful. Koya, you're enough." And I look back now, I was like, my God, it just, those words, which I thought were mere words, and though I love that she did it, I also thought this is my mother. So my mother, of
She
course, is
has
one
to
of the,
say these things.
yeah, she has to do these things. But she created a pathway that allowed me to be able to hear what he was saying as
Mhm.
well as to say, hey, mommy, I need you and I'm killing myself. And so that started just, I probably would be in therapy for the rest of my life. I keep my therapist on speed dial. Absolutely. But it started my path of healing. And from there, it morphed into um, wanted to celebrate myself. It wasn't about modeling. It wasn't about going into pageantry. It was finding my voice and being able to stand on my own 2 feet. And so, what that started to look like was I could look at myself in the mirror. And then
Mm.
I started to meet others who were dealing with, because it wasn't, I didn't learn to look at myself. I didn't find myself to be of any light, of any radiance. I was abused and I
Mhm.
felt ugly and unwanted and devalued. I didn't feel any strength in my humanity. And so
Mhm.
my mother dared me. She dared
Oh,
me to step out. She dared me to walk out the door. I remember one time I went on a date, which was a huge thing. My clothes were super wrinkled, and my mother said, "Daughter, come back." She said, "You will celebrate yourself," because I still didn't want to be seen.
yeah.
And so she made me, which may seem small to someone else, iron my clothes so I would feel presentable. It's just those very small things that others
Mhm.
may feel, oh, it's just irony, but it's like I didn't want to be
Mhm.
noticed. I didn't want no one to see me. And my mother said to me, she said, she's such a beautiful woman. She said, "You want him to look at you, but first you must look at yourself."
Oh,
Yeah, I was. Yeah, my mother.
wow.
I didn't know. I didn't know everyone didn't have a mommy like my
Yes.
mother. Amazing, amazing. I'm jumping the gun a bit, but when my mother transitioned during COVID 2020, she said to me, "Do not forget the mission that God has placed on your life. You are not defined by your circumstances." Those are the last words she said to me. The very last words she
Wow.
said to me. And my sister, my mother, and I were writing a book, a super long title. It says, "What Our Mother Told Us to Remember and We Forgot." And
That's great. I
she,
love
yeah,
that.
she's amazing. She just wrote things out for us. And she said, "Do not," she kept saying, "Daughter, Koya." My mother always called me Ko. She said, "Do not allow those circumstances to define you." She said, "I won't be here, but you have to remember." It's yeah, yeah, she is why I'm here. So what happened was, as we're now growing in strength, still going through therapy, I saw a commercial. I needed money for grad school, and I saw a commercial on TV for a modeling agency. And I was talking to one of my good friends, and I said, "Do you think I could do it?" And she said, I've had angels around me all the time." She said,
Mm,
"Until you believe in yourself, it doesn't matter what anyone else says." And I
yes.
said, "Okay." So I went to my mom. I said, "Mom, do you think that this is something I could do?" And she said something similar. She said, "Let's drive." Now, this is I think it was MapQuest. We had at that time. And we
Print
drove,
out the directions.
yeah, yes, write down things. And we drove to Baltimore, Maryland. And it wind up being a pageant, was Ms. Baltimore for the Ms. America system. And
Oh,
we didn't
okay.
know anything about pageantry, anything about modeling. And my little lean, trying to heal self, we placed top 10 out of about 50 girls.
Wow.
And we said, huh, we may be on to, we may be on to something. But what I learned in speaking with some of the other contestants is that my story, though very unique and tragic, I had alienated myself so much. Everybody has a story. Everybody
Mhm.
has successes. Everybody has some woefulness, but it's the strength to step out and say, "I'm going to take control of this. I am
Mhm.
not defined by this circumstance. I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor." That happened through pageantry, and not that it couldn't have
Mhm.
happened in any other instance, but I was just speaking to these other beautiful young women about their platforms. And it was then my platform of self-love developed. Initially we didn't speak on um, my trauma. It was more about the enactments, those strategies that we've used.
Okay.
However, I felt that I was being disingenuous in some spaces where I can speak about what's helped me, but how did I get here?
Right.
And so we started just to slowly evolve it, because what I was finding out in therapy, I wasn't ready to be as
Mm.
open about it. However, when I came back into pageantry, I'm jumping the gun a little bit. I've had the blessing to represent DC in a few pageants as Miss DC in different titles, and I've had a few national titles as well. My current title is Elite Miss US United and underneath the US United pageant system. But I came back into pageantry last year. So I'm actually ending my national reign, and I surrender my title to my successor in July.
Okay.
But my current pageant coach, I had been out of pageantry probably maybe about 6, 7 years. So the industry had changed.
Yeah.
And she didn't know me from Adam. And she asked me why. Why is self love, self awareness, ignite to empower? Why is that your platform? And I told her why. And she changed my life. She said, okay, so I told her about my trauma and things like that. And
Hmm.
she told me that she would not coach me until I went back into active therapy because I had paused. Because she said
Oh.
that she said, there's no way I can have you to speak on self love if you're not able. Because she was asking me, she asked me to be very specific. She said, how's little Koya? That's exactly
Mm.
what she asked me. And I paused and I said, she's fine. Kind of curt. She's fine. She's
She's fine. Stop asking me.
very, yeah, I was like, oh, because I'm thinking we're going to talk about everything more pageant related. And she said, where is she right now? And I had never even processed that. So at that point, I saw her still in the place of her abuse, which was in the basement of the home. And I said, she's still in the basement. She said, why haven't you brought her out?
Mm.
And I said, she's fine. She said, but it became this whole therapeutic set. It was totally not what I imagined as far as a pageant coaching system, but it was everything that I needed in that moment. She made everything very clear. And she allowed me to be able to speak voice to my healing when I thought I was doing it, when what I actually did very well was compartmentalize it. And I'm not stating that I wasn't going through healing. I hadn't healed in some spaces, but I did need to bring little Koya out that basement. And so it took a while. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of work, but it took about 6 months for me to physically reimagine myself in that space,
Okay.
um, and to physically, literally walk her up the stair to get her out. So then after that, she said, "Are you sure you're ready?" And I said, "I don't know." I said,
Am
"I don't
I?
know." I said, "But what I would do is my name is super long, and one of my African names is Akinjale. It means the treasure, and I would say Akinjale is great." And she said, "I don't want to speak to Akinjale. I need to speak to Koya because Koya was the one who was abused." And
Mm.
what my therapist said, which now makes a lot of sense, she said Kendra came in to save Koya. And so when I'm in my session, she said, you always talk about a Kendra. She says, who's here? I said, oh, Kendra's here. The Kendra's here. I did my little show. The Kendra's here. She said, I don't want her. I want Koya. She said, a Kendra has always been saving Koya. She said,
Mm.
can you now merge them together? And I said, I don't know if I can. She said, you have to, because you still leaving little Koya out of that conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what we were able to do. And so once we were able to do that, then finally I was able to be coached. And lo and behold, we won the national title.
Whoa.
So yeah, so I just this has been I'm so sorry I'm long winded, but this
No.
has been a dynamic year. This national title has changed my life overnight. And it's not about just the podcast and the interviews and the glitz and the glam. It's been really about my healing.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the first time when I have purposely placed myself into very vulnerable positions, as well, and not just to speak, but to be in company with others that I know have dealt with the same thing, because now it makes it even more real with to me. And so I just give thanks to my mother, my ancestors, and you said you're an energy worker. One of my good sorors, she does energy work with me, because it's also a lot of pouring.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think I've never felt, and not to be hubris, I've never felt so beautiful. I've never felt so strong. I've never felt so certain
Mm.
um, in my life. And I just give that. So my story's been one that has been very long. It hasn't been linear at all.
Never
But
is.
I celebrate. I love water. And the reason I'm saying that is because I remember contemplating, I wanted to use water as an escape to exit me out. I celebrate water. I love to sit by it now.
Mm-hmm.
Janet, it's such I love being here. So that's just me in a nutshell.
That is amazing. Just the fact that you can say, I love being here
Yeah.
after everything is, that's going to be mind blowing to some of the people listening right now, because, they're in that spot that we've all been in where we don't want to be here. And like,
Yeah.
will it ever change? Will I ever get to the point where we say, I love being here? And of course, the answer is yes. Yes,
Absolutely.
that will happen.
Yes, there's another side. And what I
Hmm.
had to do, I had to speak out loud. I remember my mother asked me, what is it that I wanted? And I wasn't really clear because I didn't know. But what I realized is I wanted peace. She said, what
Yeah.
does peace looks like? I wanted my soul and the essence of who I am to feel settled. What does that look like, Koya? And ultimately, it came down to writing it out, screaming it out, hitting it out, running it out. And what I was doing was having a physical declaration of what I sought. And the way I was raised and the way I believe is that words and actions are vibration and energy.
Yeah.
And I needed to have that outward manifestation of that energy that I was seeking internally. And that's been my driving force, without question.
Hmm. There was another thing you said that actually mirrors the last podcast interview that I did,
Hmm.
and we were talking about how healing ourselves changes our physical lives.
Hmm.
Like you said, you had to heal your inner self
Yeah.
in order to get that success in
Yeah.
your real life.
Yes.
The reason that you won that national title is because you healed little Koya
Yeah.
and all the things in between. You know, the healing work isn't just about feeling better, about healing, about all the things that you might think it is.
Yeah.
It's about creating that life for ourselves of loving it and success and having those material things that we all most maybe not all but that we strive for. We want a comfortable home and
Yes.
to not have to worry about things and just build that life that we want to live, whatever that looks like. But we
Hmm.
can't do that until we're healed on the inside.
Absolutely. I keep bringing up my mom because she just shaped so much of who I am. She's my
Hmm.
first teacher. My mother was a seamstress, and she would call my sister and I sometimes into the room, and she would make her garments from. She'd make her own patterns, and she
Hmm.
would say, "Girls, it's you." You are creators. You use your kaumba, and what you create is the manifestation of how your hands are healers. Your hands create things, and what the outcome is from your vision, and your vision is from how you feel internally. And so she would use the metaphor, she just have a small piece of fabric or what have you, and then it becomes this glamorous dress. And she would just
Mm.
give just different type of examples of how she was able, and this is the way I process, she was able to create because she had the vision to do it, but it came from that innate part of herself
Mm-hmm.
that was able to see it. And
Yeah.
that's those same instructions she did with us, able to see ourselves as radiant, able to see ourselves as victorious. And it took a little bit longer with me, longer with me, but I just give thanks for having a mother, a mentor, someone who loves me from the spirit, loves me here, loved me before she even saw my face, who took the time to pour into me, to teach me about that ability to create. So
Yeah.
yes, this happened, but you can create a whole other life for yourself. It doesn't mean that you won't go through a process.
Mm-hmm.
But dang on it, Janet, yes. I give thanks, yeah, for that.
Yeah. I love that. I love that metaphor of the fabric and the dress. If you
Yeah.
and we always say that if you can see it, then it's meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
can't envision a life for yourself that can't actually happen.
Mm-hmm. And that,
So, if you have the fabric and you can see the dress, you can make it,
yeah,
right?
yes,
And it's
absolutely. And again, that's that same mirror work that she did with us.
hmm
Who do you see? Who do you want to be? Speak to yourself. Speak life to yourself. And so, yes, if whoever's listening, there is power in words. There's power in
hmm
so much power in the strength of healing yourself and speaking those words to yourself in order to create that life that you seek. I'm living proof because I just remember I had no desire to be here. I'm so glad I got it wrong. I'm so glad. I just, yeah, this is a beautiful place
Yeah,
to be.
it
Yeah.
is. And I also love that, you reached out when you were struggling,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And talk to people, whether it's a therapist or your mom or your sister, whoever it was, just be like, I need some help. I can't do
Yes.
that. And surrounding yourself with people who loved you.
Absolutely.
Even if they're doing the tough love and threatening to tell your dad on you.
Yes, and one thing that helped me in understanding the strength of vulnerability, I saw my paternal grandfather um, had come to visit us one day, and he's lived in Detroit, and I saw my daddy cry. I saw my superhero cry, and it was the most. I didn't have the words to process that, but it was the most
Mhm.
beautiful thing I had ever seen because I had never seen a man cry. And I
Mhm.
thought, oh, if my daddy, the strongest man I know, can be vulnerable, I didn't know that word at that moment, but expressing tears, I can too. And that, once I dig deep, allowed me to say, hey, I'm hurting. And not that he was hurting, he was rejoicing, but to say, hey, I need to find that strength to be open to say, I need help. I wanted
Yeah.
to be so much like my daddy and my mom. But I wanted to be able to stand firm if I needed to express in tears to say, I'm still strong, whatever.
Mhm.
I have an issue with that strong actual word sometimes because sometimes it's like, oh, you can't adjust a position as if you're not. But no, there's strength in vulnerability.
Yes.
And so now I celebrate that I can use my words to say, hey, that didn't feel nice to my heart space. That may not have been your intent, but I just want to express is so can we speak about what was your intent? Because it just didn't land gently with me. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, you've got me thinking all kinds of things right now. I'm just like,
No,
oh, I'm
no.
gonna have to go do some journaling after this conversation.
No, no, and I'm a fan a little bit. It's getting hot. Yeah, I'm grateful to have met some amazing people during my journey who have really poured in me, who have shared with me. Um, I'm blessed, and they have really been a part of my healing journey. it hasn't always been, as I stated, beautiful.
Never
But
is.
I'm now able to identify. I had to shift my mindset from victim to survivor.
Yes.
And just the incorporation of that word survivor has his own energy within itself. And it made me feel proud, not because of what I went through, but because I'm now here. And to be able to say, hey, there's another side. It doesn't mean that you won't feel. It doesn't mean I won't remember.
Hmm.
But there's a celebration that I have for life.
Yes. So, what advice would you give to somebody who's listening who is thinking that they are never going to be here long enough to love life?
I would first start with I need you to identify, I need you to know that you are a unique and beautiful and cared for and sacred and holy and whichever other words you want to use human being. Sometimes our stories may not, the outline, the framework may not be what we desire for it to be, but there is another side. Um, I spoke earlier about I had to scream it out, I had to yell it out, I had to write it out. I offer those same words to any and everyone. Because and what I'm saying, screaming out what you seek for your life. There's
Hmm.
power in that. Not allowing what has happened to you to define you. You have permission to be the author of your next chapter and those chapters going forward. You have the greatest love story, your own.
Hmm.
And what sometimes people who may not who aren't standing in grace and in love, they may think that they've taken something for you, but you can take it back. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. I'm saying it is doable. It
Yes.
is obtainable. It is
Hmm.
achievable. And if I can offer anything else, it would be that quote that Les Brown, I heard him say, if there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. In other words, you are your greatest advocate. You are your greatest cheerleader. No one knows your story but you. And I dare you to be your greatest lover. There's another side. There's another side. I promise you that.
Koya, you're making me cry. Oh,
Oh
it's so
goodness.
beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I sit by now I'm gonna cry. I sit by water a lot. And I shared a little bit earlier and I listen to the ripples. I see the ripples. I listen to the wind blowing and I hear the birds singing. And it's a celebration of life that I'm so glad I didn't miss. Even the more I feel the sun on my skin, and I rejoiced about that because I remember a time where I was like, God, I'm so angry at you. And not to make this super religious, but it's like, oh, this actually can serve me. This is beauty in motion. And I'm a part of this picturesque setting.
Mm-hmm.
It's I now include myself into the day versus trying to rush into the next one to rush into the next one. I'm trying to be a part of the sonnet of life. I want to be part of the treble and bass clef of this song, of this beautiful just overture. It's and I try to be super poetic, but I just it's it's a melody to me and I want to be a part of it. And if I could add that on to anyone else, this is it's luxury in living to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's it's a privilege for me to be here, but also for to also I look at it again not to be hubris, for to me to be able to offer to be a part of the day of someone else. I I feel I radiate and I want to be able to be a part of the day so I can now see other wonderful human beings as they radiate, as they
Yeah.
are celebrating the song of life. as they are gliding through the treble clef and bass clef, and they're like, I love it here. I'm sorry. I get excited because I remember a time where it was just, this was not my outlook. Yes. And it's not to say, again, that life won't have its ebbs and flows. It will. But I believe when you have defined your life for yourself and you have your own ethos, your own framework, your own vision, your own mission statement, that's the crux.
Yeah.
I'm now very much clear as to my mission and purpose in life. And that's my barometer.
Mm-hmm. That's another thing that came up in my conversation in the last podcast
Mhm.
was, when we're in our 20s, we just think we know everything and that we should know everything.
Yeah.
And obviously we don't and we can't.
Right.
And at any age, we can't know everything because we've never lived this life before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it takes time. It takes decades for us to like really understand
Yeah.
why we're here
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to share that with the world, to radiate.
Yes, Terry. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I'm gonna have to have you do some energy work with me.
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your
Absolutely.
story and your wisdom and your light with us. I appreciate you.
Thank you. It is my pleasure. It is my pleasure. I look forward to having a session with you, Janet. Yes. And if I can.
Thank you for listening. Remember that you are loved, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are meant for more, and that it really does get better. If you are in crisis, there are numbers that you can call or text to get the help that you need. That information for Canada and the US is in the description below each episode. If you are in immediate crisis, please call 911. We love you, and I hope you'll listen again.